Now, going on to the political part of the podcast, you have Vivek Ramaswamy's tweet on the forces trying to ban Trump for running, getting 1.9 million views in 18 hours, which is astronomical. Now, I will say this as a little caveat, and I appreciate the feedback in the comments. A couple of days ago, someone said, Topping, are you aware that you can actually buy views and likes on many social media platforms? I said, yes, that is true. I've done a little bit of research on that. I know there are certain providers, but long term, it is usually not prudent because it artificially skews your numbers and the parent companies always catch you. So it could very well be happening right now. I don't think that would be a long-term successful plan for Vivek because, again, this is a long race. The election is still, relatively speaking, a long way away. If you were to artificially boost his numbers with a unethical means, I would have guessed strategically it'd be more towards maybe October next year. Because again, most of these technologies are eventually detectable, very similar to cybersecurity. This little cat and mouse game, trying to make sure only the right tweets are shown and only real followers are going. And when it comes to most social media platforms, it's very easy for you to artificially change the view count. It's much more difficult to change and artificially replicate comments. So that's why I always say a really good way to see if a video has a lot of authentic views is look at the ratio of how many people are commenting on the video. This stands true for most platforms, whether it be YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter, now X. The more I research how to check out channels, the more I find that is a good rule of thumb for now. Again, with ChatGPT and all these other AI technologies, we might get to a point where it's very easy to replicate comments as well. Only time shall tell how that evolves and how all these parent companies try to combat that. So I will say that as a caveat, that could be true for Vivek. But with the data I have right now, I think more likely it is true he is getting these amount of views or impressions, as they would say, on Twitter X. Now, it is a little bit lengthy, but going to his statement, and I was going to say, unlike Trump, he doesn't really have a good accent or like an accent that you can parody. So you won't get to hear me butcher an accent during this part of the show. I'm sorry. I wish there's something I could do for you, but you'll just have to hear my mixed, Midwest Southern accent and be content for now. So this is from Vivek, and he says, quote, having tried just about every trick in the book to eliminate President Trump from running in this election, the left is now deploying a new tactic to bar him from ever holding office again, the 14th Amendment. As someone who is now polling in second or third place in most major national polls, I would be able to more easily win this GOP primary if Trump were eliminated from the competition. But that's not how I want to succeed. I stand on principles over politics, which is why I am sharing the following viewpoint, despite the fact that Trump is one of my opponents in this primary. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment states that any person who has been, quote, previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution is disqualified from holding public office if that person engaged in, another quote, with quote, in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof. Politicized groups are attempting to make Trump ineligible to run for president, arguing he fomented and in fact engaged in insurrection on January 6th. This is the perversion of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was the part of the, quote, Reconstruction Amendments that were ratified following the Civil War. It was passed to prohibit former Confederate military and political leaders from holding high federal or state office. These men had clearly taken part in a rebellion against the United States, the Civil War. Participants in the events of January 6th did not. And Trump, of course, was not even among them. This makes it all the more absurd that a left-wing group in Colorado is asking a federal court to disqualify the former president on the same grounds, arguing that his stump speeches on and before January 6th equate to rebellion against the United States. And there's another legal problem. Trump is not a former, quote, officer of the United States, as that term is used in the Constitution, meaning Section 3 does not apply. As the Supreme Court explained in Free Enterprise Fund versus Public Company Accounting Oversight Board 2010, and, quote, officer of the United States, unquote, is someone appointed by the president to aid him in his duties under Article 2, Section 2. The term does not apply to elected officials and certainly does not to the president himself. The framers of the 14th Amendment would be shocked and appalled to see their narrow provision intended to bar former U.S. officials who switched to the Confederacy from seeking public office being weaponized by a sitting president and his political allies to prevent a former president from seeking re-election. I've said it before, I'll say it again, President Biden and his allies are engaging in election interference of the highest order. Yesterday's filing is just the latest in a string of baseless lawsuits designed to silence political opponents and swing the election for Joe Biden. This time by depriving Americans of the right to vote for the candidate of their choice. The judge assigned to this case should immediately toss it out. Our country is becoming unrecognizable to anyone who understands our Constitution, and we don't have long to fix it. Unquote. Again, if only there's more of an accent I could play around with like Trump. Oh well, that is quite a mouthful. And interestingly enough, I can't help but think he's one of maybe 12 people. He's one of maybe he's one of 12 candidates. He's one of the few candidates who've probably actually read a history book, let alone the United States Bill of Rights Constitution. I think there actually should be tests for people in the government to actually, know the foundation of the government. Can't help but think it'd be very similar to the sad stories where you go downtown in a city, you ask them, what's a country that starts with a U, and they don't know, or how many states are there, and they guess 53, some moronic number like that, where they just have no idea because either they don't care or they're not educated, or both. The public schools, though, they deserve more money, I'm told. So, interestingly enough, you had a couple good responses and a couple negative. But overall, I'd say scrolling through the comments, I'd say about 75% positive. So better than his previous post where he was posting about social media and how to protect children from it. That was much more divisive and divided on how people viewed it in terms of the government role as well as his statements. Now, the top one was someone called Ryan R. saying, quote, Vivek constantly comes out and speaks what's on his mind. He doesn't need pollsters or analysts and PACs to coach him. He just does, unquote. Now, that person got 58.7 thousand views and 1,019 likes, giving him a ratio of 1.7%. Again, all these numbers are equal. They're all taken at the 18th hour after Vivek had posted it. You also have a gentleman by the name of It's Not Rocket Science saying, quote, election interference, not even tried to hide it, unquote. This person got 3,997 views and 74 likes. Pretty good, coming in at 1.96%. Now you have someone by the name of Demonica saying, quote, our country is already unrecognizable. Thank you for sharing this informative statement, unquote. The person got 3,130 views and 98 likes, coming in at 3.13%. You also have Alan Edwards saying, quote, I am with you 100%, Vivek. Keep fighting the good fight, unquote. I was going to say, that's a good quote. He says he got 20.5 thousand views and 394 likes, giving a ratio of 1.92%. Pretty good. And I just like that phrase, fight the good fight, because it is true. Now, you also have some that were a little more critical of him coming, and then some that are just kind of middle of the ground, saying from Big Jim CEO, he said, quote, you have our attention, Vivek, for 2028, unquote. That person's got 18,500 views and 264 votes, or rather likes, giving a ratio of 1.43%, which is pretty darn good. Then you come in at Stephen Mike saying, quote, this feels criminal no matter your political affiliation, unquote, getting 20,000 views and 169 likes, giving a ratio of 0.85% ratioed. So, pretty darn good. And in terms of the waiting for 2028, that's something I'm noticing that more and more as he's progressed through the political process, trying to win the primary. I've seen more and more of the comments, and there are a lot of people who really, they like his ideals and they appreciate how articulate he is with his ideals as well. But there are a lot of people who just really like Trump. That's why I suspect there's a lot of fans, there's a lot of support, I think, around a Trump-Vivek ticket. That being in case in which Trump is going for president, while Vivek is running as the vice president. Now, that's something I think more and more people are wanting. And again, with the poll numbers, and the big uncertainty is what's going to happen with Trump with all of this situation where he's being sued left and right. They're barring him. There are even some states trying to take him off the ballot. I mean, all it needs to happen is them to win once, and he's in a lot of trouble. Now, in that case, right now, a lot of polls are saying DeSantis is in the front. Then Vivek would have, I think, a bigger shot of becoming president, because then it's basically him versus DeSantis. But in this case, it seems like, and again, there's a lot of uncertainty, but it seems like he's still third place. And I think there'd be a lot of support for him to go for VP. It'll be interesting to see, but in terms of that statement, it is interesting to see, and he's very clever in his positioning because this differentiates him from the Republican, all the other ones, really. Because very similar to the GOP debate, when they asked, would you pardon Trump? He was the first to raise his hand. And that got a lot of attention. That went viral. Brilliant move on the political chessboard, some might say. And it's one of those instances where he raised his hand. The competition, all the other GOP, wannabe, they're all running for the nomination. All of those who had the aspirations standing next to him, they hesitated. And the thing that really caught my eye is they looked around. So they're obviously susceptible to peer pressure. They're trying to read the room, which is a cliche thing that so many politicians do. And you've seen this all the time where they change their positions, not because positions name the topic, they flipped on all of them, but a lot of them where they just lick their finger and put it out in the air to see which way is the wind blowing today, what will get me more votes. And I think a lot of people are really not appreciating that. And I do apologize if there's I'm trying to see. Can never tell what the Zoom is doing, or not the Zoom, rather the focus is. A little bit of issues with the hardware this week, and it's kind of a hit or miss, to be honest. So trying to see what I can do to keep it in more focus, and I'm using autofocus, but unfortunately, sometimes technology just does what it does, or rather, it doesn't. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. Again, I know it's ambitious, but we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of September, so if you click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, I really appreciate the feedback as we try to make the show better and better. Slowly but surely, perhaps, getting better at my enunciation and slowing down my speech patterns, as many of you in the comments noted that was something you did not appreciate and you wanted me to work on. So that's something where we're working together to make this show better and better. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.